Is history hiding a monster more terrifying than any fiction? We imagine vampires as creatures of the night, emerging from mist-shrouded graves. But what if the most terrifying monster of all wore not a cloak, but a crown? What if she lived not in a crypt, but in a castle, and her curse was not supernatural, but a very human evil? This is the story of Countess Erzsébet Báthory, the woman history would remember as the Blood Countess. In the late 16th century, in the heart of the Hungarian Empire, Erzsébet Báthory was born into a world of immense privilege and power. She was a member of one of Europe's most influential families, married to a ferocious war hero and mistress of vast estates. From the outside, her life was a picture of gilded perfection within the stone walls of Čachtice Castle. She was intelligent, educated, and formidable. But beneath this veneer of nobility festered a dark obsession. As the Countess aged, the mirror became her enemy. In a world that valued youth and beauty above all else in a woman, each passing year was a personal betrayal. The legend, whispered through the centuries, tells of a fateful accident. A young servant girl, trembling as she brushed the Countess's hair, tugged too hard. In a fit of rage, Erzsébet struck the girl with such force that her blood splattered across the Countess's own face. Later, while gazing into her mirror, she made a horrifying discovery. The skin where the Virgin's blood had touched seemed younger, more vibrant, more alive. It was in that moment that a grotesque conviction took root in her mind. She became consumed by the belief that the blood of young virgin girls was a potent elixir, a mystical fountain of youth that could wash away the relentless march of time. And so, the beautiful Čachtice Castle transformed into a chamber of horrors. No longer a seat of power, it became a slaughterhouse from which few emerged. The Countess, leveraging her station, lured countless young peasant girls to the castle with promises of lucrative work as maidservants. They would pass through the grand gates, filled with hope, only to descend into a nightmare from which there was no escape. Imagine the scene, if you dare. A young woman, barely more than a girl, is led deep into the bowels of the castle. The air grows cold and damp, the scent of decay replacing the perfumes of the upper chambers. The torches on the walls cast long dancing shadows that seem to reach for her. She is subjected to unimaginable tortures, beaten, starved, burned with hot irons, and forced into iron maidens. And then, the final, unspeakable act. The legends claim that Erzsébet would bathe in their blood, believing this grotesque ritual would preserve her fading beauty. She was not alone in her crimes. A loyal circle of servants, a wet nurse, a washerwoman, a dwarf, facilitated the abductions, the torture, and the grim disposal of the bodies, which were sometimes thrown into the moat or buried in unmarked graves on the castle grounds. The whispers began in the local villages. At first, they were quiet, dismissed as peasant superstition. But as more and more daughters vanished, the whispers grew into a chorus of terror. The official number, pulled from court documents and testimonies, is a staggering 650 victims, a number so vast it defies comprehension. The countryside was paralyzed with fear. For years, Erzsébet Báthory was untouchable, shielded by her immense wealth and powerful name. The lives of peasant girls were inconsequential to the nobility. But then, she made a fatal mistake. She began to target the daughters of the minor nobility. These families had voices, they had influence, and they demanded answers. Their outrage could not be ignored. In 1610, King Matthias II was forced to act. He sent his most trusted official, György Thurzó, to investigate the macabre rumors surrounding the Blood Countess. The stories say that Thurzó arrived at Čachtice Castle unexpectedly, catching the Countess and her accomplices red-handed in a scene of pure hell. The evidence was overwhelming. Dozens of dead, dying, and imprisoned girls were discovered within the castle walls. Witnesses were gathered, and their testimonies painted a picture of depravity that shocked even the hardened men of the court. Her accomplices were swiftly put on trial, where they detailed decades of torture and murder. They were found guilty and executed in brutal fashion. Yet, Erzsébet Báthory, a countess of royal blood, never stood trial. A public spectacle would have scandalized the entire aristocracy. Instead, a private conviction was arranged. Her punishment was as unique as it was cruel. She was walled up alive within her own castle. The windows and doors of her chambers were sealed with bricks and stone, leaving only a small, narrow slit for food and air.